So just practicing his guitar, so I'm going to close the door.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Saturday Night Sci-Fi Shadow Chat. Tonight's going to be part two of the mixing genres, which we started last week, but spent most of the time hanging out with George DeRosa from Emperor's Choice, talking about Arduin and all that goodness. And the rest of the weekend, I've been going over the Chalt book, which was an absolute blast. Glad I got a chance to get that because it's right up my alley, being a massively mixed genre smorgasbord of literally everything. I think it's got horror. I think the only thing it really didn't have that I noticed was any Wild West themed content, but that's okay. It's not everybody's cup of tea, as it were. And let's face it, it's like the redheaded stepchild of genres. What you got there?
That's Chalt, or at least one of them. Chalt, Fuchsia Malaise. This was the one I wanted.
I don't have that one. I just got the first one. I honestly thought that it was actually more of an RPG as opposed to just a massive book of adventures, which is fine. I can mix in, other stuff and work it out and add it to my own, campaigns, as it were. If there is one, I'm guessing it's Crimson Dragon Slayer or something like that. That is his actual RPG. And you guys know me. I'm more into settings than systems, but which one is that?
The Clown Worm.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was hanging out with Raven Wolfgar, I think it was, this morning, and I guess he had seen my review and wanted to do a show dedicated to Venger. So I had to hang out with those guys this morning, and I saw a bunch of the other stuff that I don't have as of yet, but I'll get it eventually. I just bought a brand new computer today, so
good.
I'm gonna be and it is my birthday month here in April, so I'm gonna be taking it easy on my purchases, just because I'm so backlogged on stuff to read now. If it's miniatures or something like that, because I do have the Dungeons and Lasers Kickstarter that kicks off the 11th, and that's another 500 bones that I'll be dropping on that without even blinking. So everything else, can wait. And Bloodworth actually sent me the first two, the Players and DM's Guide for Castles and Crusades, because I'm going to be in his campaign. Okay. So he was kind enough to send me that. And it looks, to be honest, it looks like, mostly just a AD&D kind of game, which, me, I've got no problems with that. That's my, my original jam. That was the first game I got into, and it'll be fun. It's, when I go ahead.
I'm just going to make fun of it whenever I hear Legion of Myth. It's Tolkien-esque, blah, blah, blah. There were green Martians in the original, right? With laser guns. Yep. That's why I have to laugh sometimes when he's like, well, it's not like that. I'm like, no, you came in second, Ed, dude. You missed some of the crazy in first.
Yeah. Second Ed was AD&D light, literally in every aspect. And I have all the books, and I enjoyed them. But they were really just a supplement to the original AD&D. Some of it was watered down, some of it was beefed up. And on the whole, what I hated about Second Ed the most was the less money, less treasure, less damage the players were dishing out, and more damage, and the monsters all got beefed up. The players stayed the same for the most part, but the monsters, got really, really beefed up and chinked out when it came to treasure.
Well, and I know they changed some of the experience points around. I think the other thing that came down to it was, I understand where people went into it. I know that you guys talked on Table Breaker. Was it Table Breakers or Gatekeepers? Anyway, about dragons and how dragons can be super tough. And I said, I understand that, but at a certain point, some of it was just intended to be, the dragon had, an ancient dragon, 88 hit points, but people forget 88 hit points. That was enough to TPK a party in one breath weapon. And that was it. And you're like, well,
yeah, absolutely was. And if not, okay, it breathes out its 88 points. Half your party saves, half doesn't. Okay, half the party's dead. Couple rounds later, it does it again. Who's still standing after 88 to 172 points of damage in 3 rounds to everybody?
Well, even if you save, if you don't have quite the right things, 44 hit points, so that takes out your mage, that probably takes out your thief, that takes out maybe your cleric survives it, and then that leaves maybe the fighter for 1 breath weapon, and it gets 3. You're pretty much done.
Yep.
I think that people forget about that. Now it does say
right. And spells, it could launch off a lightning bolt during, its in between round, or a minor globe of invulnerability. So it's not taking lightning, it's not taking fireball or magic missile or all that other cool stuff. The power, the workhorses of the game. Sure, you could maybe, if you had like a 12 level magic user, you can blast off your 1/6 level spell. It's gonna save.
Even if it doesn't, it only takes half damage, which means it probably only takes 40 or 50 hit points. Then it breath weapons you, and your mage is dead. It's what was the average magic user? Even if you're up there, the average magic user might have 30 hit points.
Yeah, with a 1 point con bonus and average die rolls, you're looking at 33 hit points at 11th level. And I've got an 8th level magic user in Bloodworth's game that has 34 hit points, because I actually had the 16 con. I was smart and put it in there. And I still have the fewest hit points in the party, even though there's a couple of elf split classes and, thieves and stuff like that. And still the lowest amount of hit points. And, it didn't need, not to mention one of my biggest gripes was in second ed, they dropped the damage. They didn't drop, but they capped out the damage of fireballs and lightning bolts to 10d6 as opposed to 1 per level.
I was okay with that. I'm okay with that, but I like what George was saying about Emperor's Choice for Ardenwen, is that you can power them up with more mana points. That's something I really like. Instead of saying, I don't mind capping, because I thought it was kind of ridiculous when you get to really high levels. It's like, oh, okay, I understand it. And then I said, well, why do these spells become like killer? Like the 3rd level spell starts becoming more powerful than Meteor Swarm, which is a 9th level spell. I said, there's a problem there. That's the way I was looking at it. But then the other part,
I can see that. As long as it works both ways with the monsters too. Your Lich is only doing a 10d6 fireball. All right, fine. Okay, but having played a lot of with not me personally, but my players having a lot of high level magic user characters. They were kind of bent out of shape when, their 17 die fireball is now a 10 die fireball. And,
I would have rather them just simply say, hey, look, it's what it is. It's 3d6 plus, it's 1d6 plus 3d6 for the spell level that you cast. And actually, I know we were talking with George last week. I'm not sure how much was before or after, because I think we talked a little bit after you left.
Yeah, we did.
And so I would have rather them say, hey, look, you can cast a 1st level fireball, a 2nd level, a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, and it just takes up the spell slot. So you go, which I think is what modern D&D does for some of it. But I thought that would have been cooler. It's like, oh, you want to cast a 7th level fireball? Guess what? It does 22 dice of damage. And I think that no one would have had any real problems with that. As a 7th level spell. Basically, it's 3d6 times the spell level plus 1d6. So if you're cast, so it'd be like a 4d6 at first level. Well,
and having those higher level spells, not be able to compete with the workhorses didn't make a lot of sense. Even the delayed blast fireball, a 7th level spell just did 1 point per level more, which is pretty devastating. But when you're talking about, like you said, meteor swarm and some of the other spells, death spell, no game's perfect. And
right.
People forget how very little else there was back then, up until, mid to late 80s. There was really, maybe 10 or 20 games out there in total. And how many of those were TSR?
Well, let's see. These are the ones I remember. We're going to go from like 84. Traveler I heard about, Woolmaster. I never saw Woolmaster out in the wild. I never saw Traveler out in the wild. So that kind of narrowed that down. I had Star Frontiers, oddly enough, Indiana Jones, Top Secret, which are all TSR, and D&D. And then I also heard about Call of Cthulhu. But some of those I didn't see like B. Dalton, where I lived at least, for B. Dalton. I didn't see those until the mid 80s, and I didn't see Traveler until much later.
Yeah, RuneQuest was a biggie at the beginning, but not my cup of tea. There was also Aftermath, and I think Middle Earth was a thing back then.
Yes, MERP. Yeah, I think MERP was mid 80s as well.
And GURPS as well, and.
Yeah, but GURPS, a lot of these I didn't see until the mid to late 80s. So we're saying like 86, 87. It's the same time Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and some of these others came out. But you're right. Before, like in 1984, it was either TSR or if you were lucky enough, you got Traveler or you got something from Chaosium. That was about it.
I have both Stormbringer and Elric from Chaosium. And as much as I love the Elric books, when I read them the third time through last year, it occurred to me that have you read all the Elric books?
Only the first thick one. So I'm still in the second, and I need to go through it.
Okay. When you get to the last one, get back with me because you'll realize that, I don't really want to run in that game. I don't want to. There's like no reason unless you've never read the books. If you've never read the books, cool. Absolutely cool. But if you've read the books, you know how the story ends, and there's no point. There's literally, it's like trying to play, in a King Arthur game where the DM is going to run King Arthur. Well, you're like, well, I know all that.
Well, you know what though is I don't mind. I guess that's Pendragon. It's not that I mind that, but
what's happening, James?
But I want to background. It's the same thing like Conan. Guess what? Conan's somewhere else, not involving your characters, and it's the same thing with like.
No, I mean the really big games where. The really big games where stories.
We got the ball gag. That's what concerns me. No,
well, it's after 10 o'clock somewhere. Yeah. What's happening, James? How the hell are you?
Not bad. Just a social call, really. I don't have anything magical to say.
Oh, well, you know what? You saw the title. I guarantee you've got some ideas because the questions I have are less, technical. They're more opinion and cultural questions that I have. The same questions from last week that we never got around to, but we'll get to those in a minute. I'm in no hurry. It's the beginning of a brand new month. I had a busy ass day.
And we got to bring this up. When you brought George on, I think everyone will want to listen more about Arduin and everything than anything else, to be fair. And
absolutely.
I want to hear more from him too, because whether I agree with it or not, it's still, I think that I would rather have developers come in and talk, because I don't think we just get enough of that unless it's pre-scripted. I hate pre-scripted everything because you feel it controlled and it feels so fake and artificial. And he was like out there. I really appreciate it.
On this show, unless my son and I are standing up in front of the Christmas tree or in front of the flag like we used to do, and then we had the little index card, just to keep us on track. You'll never see a scripted show here. Even though I got a new computer, I don't know how much editing I'm going to want to do unless I get a lot of help from the little guy. I absolutely love what Joshua from Total Party Skills has been doing lately. The difference is night and day. He does some great stuff. We're not going to agree. We're not going to agree on everything, but you know what? He and I are adult enough to get past all that and just go, hey, look, we love this hobby. What you do at home behind closed doors or with the cameras off or with the cameras on, as long as you're not streaming live, don't care. We're you caught that.
Well, no, I was thinking, what is his name? Was it Grimm? The one that does it with the strippers?
Oh yeah, I you know what? I really I really like T-Shirt as a historian, and those two guys are friends, and I would go on T-Shirt show and I would be cool to Grimm, but that little red star is a great way to really set me off. I'm sorry, but I just can't
knew
do
someone
it.
I knew someone who used to get around in a little Mao hat with the star, and he went into a convenience store, and the people running it were Chinese, and they yelled at him to get out.
You know what though is I dated it.
I'm sorry, Graham, if you ever watch this or if you're ever watching it or gets back to you, dude. I just can't. I was raised a certain way, and my son and I could argue the good points of being against that particular ideology, and to me, I've never seen the benefit of that ideology. I just don't see any, and if you're going to force me into that, then I'm going to fight back. If it's a choice and you can go there, you know what I mean? Cool.
There are benefits, but there's also like concrete blocks and censorship and lining up to get essential items. So
I have never heard anyone that actually lived under it talk about how great communism was.
Yeah.
Now that said,
I think some of the oldies get nostalgic for it for when it was in the ascendancy, and most people were just glad that it was over.
So this is what I've heard is a lot of I'm sorry, we're getting a little political. The Russians remember, like I went over in 93, my parents went in 92. The Russians do not have fond memories of the fall of the Soviet Union because basically everyone either became thugs or prostitutes. And I saw a lot of this myself between 92 to 2000. It was a horrible time. And to be fair on this, it's because the United States wanted to completely cripple Russia. And so they didn't care about having a peaceful transition. They're like, we're just going to rob it blind as much as we can. And that's why they're probably really discussing Putin now, because they can't rob it like they used to. But
I gotta wonder when I see people like that, they tend to actually have sort of a little bit of idol worship for the celebrities like John Lennon and other people who were all into that.
Yeah, you mean the super rich people? The super rich people that were all for it?
Right.
It's anyway, I don't want to get too much onto politics. Let's go back to
everyone kind of imagines themselves as like the managerial class in their preferred ideology, right? Like I think that's human nature.
Not this cat. I want to be left alone. Don't bug me. I won't bug you. Shauner, how the hell are you doing? Who else we got here? Dustin, of course. Mobius, welcome.
I'm gonna bring this up.
Communism works if it's only if it's done right. You first, guys. Show me how over some other continent somewheres. Show me, and maybe I'll come visit. But you come knocking at my door, you're gonna get something that you weren't expecting, or maybe you were if you watched the show.
No. Communism works just fine if everyone works and agrees to it. The problem that you have is the fact of when you have to force people into it, it's never going to work. And that's the assumption is you can't force millions and millions of people to all agree to do something, especially when they feel like they're getting screwed. But anyway, I read a lot.
I think
read the Gulag Archipelago, people. Go read the Gulag Archipelago.
I think people also forget the amount of people who were killed.
60 million.
In trying to remake the kind of system and remake the society, like to kind of just get it kind of working some of the time. That's like quite a high death toll.
No. Let's remember the war against sparrows. Just ask these people the war against sparrows. Just ask them how that turned out.
The 4 Pest campaign,
Yeah, well, it was the but no, it's the war against sparrows. It's like these people don't realize. It's like, oh, okay. You see, like you said, everyone assumes they're going to be in the high upper level managerial class. Well, guess what? If you're not that now, you're not going to be into communism either. Okay, the Bolsheviks went after the Mensheviks. The Mensheviks were the first ones that they got rid of, not the capitalists. The Mensheviks who supported them. Anyway.
They also shot Boy Scouts and deported ballerinas. So there is an element of like irrationality to the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right there with you, Shawner. That thing right there, I don't get it. I mean, there is a silver lining because if they keep doing it, eventually there won't be any of them. You know, when my son is running for office, they'll all be gone. So cool. I won't get to see that, but you know,
this is why you don't.
This stream is getting pretty. It's about money. Is getting pretty wild early on. I want to say something to get back on track. And I want to do
the baby thing.
I want to do that. I want to do that to I want to do that in the format of addressing something Bo Paints Mini said the other day, which I don't know. I kind of really felt for him in a way because he was talking about interest in a game called the Silver Bayonet, which is like a skirmish game. You have like 5 Napoleonic guys, including like a witch hunter, and it's kind of like a horse, foot, and guns fantasy game where you meet like orcs and trolls and stuff like that in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars.
Could you imagine? Pick your country, and that's like your orcs or that's your goblins or whatever, you know.
Well, that's more like Flintlock. This is more like you're the secret paranormal unit of the French army sort of thing. But he said that he was reticent to do it because he was worried about button counters and people being like strict about uniforms and stuff like that. And I just wanted to say to him, like, please don't feel like that. Like, I do a bit of historical stuff and like I just view it as like Hollywood or pulp, like representation of history, and at some point I will have red coats fighting aliens and I have no problem with it. So like just do whatever feels good. You know what I mean? Don't be held back. Don't be held back by nerds and like their opinions. Like,
and you know what? I gotta give Bo a shout out. You know, when I first met him, I knew within like 4 seconds that he's one of the great ones. Watch this guy's, star, because it's going to be shooting up there. He may, get down on himself every once in a while, but who here doesn't except me?
Sure.
Guys, he seriously, and he is a phenomenal game master. Nobody gets into it as much as he has lately that I've seen. Maybe it's the drought he went through of decades of not playing, that's just been pent up all these years, or maybe that's just that's just who he is. But
he's a GURPS player, so we know he's big brained, right? Like he can crunch all that information. Like,
to be honest, I think his friend Kevin is probably what's happening multi. I think Kevin, his friend who's also in the game with us, is like his mentor, but he's right there with him, But Bo's got like just the freaking heart of a great GM.
He wants to be the GM because he wants to play as many characters as possible during the game. That's
Well, the fun part is doing all the accents, right? Like I've been working on my halfling accent every other day. You know?
What is halfling accents? I thought that they were all Australian.
No, they're all Irish.
Okay, I have to adjust. I have to adjust this slander. Justin, I don't. I honestly, I don't do. I don't even like taking aspirin. Now, mind you, in the past, I probably tried everything you can think of at one point or another. Don't let that get out because my son doesn't know. Well, of course,
Shadow has a crippling chocolate addiction.
I'm
you know what? He absolutely does. I literally wake up in the middle of the night and eat chocolate. I literally will wake up, for that evening pee, when you wake up when you're old. It's like, I'm up and I'm going back to sleep. Might as well recharge the chocolate batteries.
I'm gonna say this much. No, because when you're old enough, you realize how much everyone else sucks, and you realize that you're just so much better than everybody else. So it's hard to get that. No,
I'm really not, that much of a narcissist, except when I go by a mirror, and then I'm like,
terrified. I'm terrified of when he hits like 70 or 80 and just says everything that's on his mind, like no filter.
Okay.
So let's go back to genres. Yep.
Real quick. When I go out, right? When I get in the car, I'm usually listening to music on my phone. Okay.
Yeah.
Or I'll be listening to, other YouTubers like you guys, or, something else, but like usually it's music, unless it's a day when Salty Cracker's on, and then I will crank the volume on my phone. I'll walk into Dollar Tree listening to Salty Cracker just to see who freaks out, who notices any part of what he's saying. But when it's just music, I mean, is that weird if I'm just walking around and it's not super loud, but I hate freaking headphones.
It's like those schizophrenic guys in the park that listen to the radio because it gives them a voice to concentrate on.
Okay, I'm gonna bring this back. Let's go back with what Sean said. What genres are we gonna talk about? So we're talking multi-genre.
Oh, okay, yeah. We didn't even. You're right. Well, okay. Right off the bat, let's go through some of our favorites and what genres actually exist. I'm gonna go and start it off with Western. Sci-fi and Western, we've seen it done since Star Trek, Firefly, just to name a couple. Ullman, what's the genre you like? And mix with sci-fi.
So mixing with sci-fi, well, one of the favorite things I like, because I enjoy the alien RPG and some of the other stuff, is horror and science fiction. And I know we've talked about this before, but I mean, come on. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's no escape. Your environment's entirely hostile, and now you get there's something out there coming after you. Hell yeah, I'm in. Well, I'm in the game. I'm not in real life, The other thing is I have been in places because people don't realize this, but boy, there's some places like when I was in Mosul Dam, you're in this 30-foot tube, it's leaking water, and all I could think was alien. As you have like the spotlights on, it's all dark around you. It has that weird oppressive feel. Oh yeah. So
man, the link's there, Justin. You want to pop in? You don't have to keep giving me shit from the chat section. You can do so in person. Sean Cherry, welcome to the show. Haven't seen you around for a while. How about you, James? What's a genre you like to mix with sci-fi, or would like to mix with sci-fi?
Like Victorian and sci-fi, definitely. Like the Age of Steam and science fiction.
Would you call that steam or Victorian or historical?
I would take elements of like real history and work them in. There's a game, like an airships game that I have where the timeline starts getting really weird around the time they invent, anti-gravity tech and they go to Mars.
You mean the Nevers on HBO?
No, I was thinking of a war game that I have, like just a PDF that I have for like Air Ironclad.
No, you can't.
Too late. I was thinking Regency and sci-fi.
What is Regent?
What's that?
Like anything by Jane Austen.
Oh, that kind of. I just saw someone tweet that out.
King George. King George.
Okay. Okay, you guys are going way out in the weeds, but I'm making a list. That's part of it.
Yeah,
I'm going to mention something because we're mentioning sci-fi. Let's not forget the good old. What was the game called? I can remember it was Leviathan and all those others from FASA. They had because, and to be fair, Traveler,
It's ringing a bell, but I can't picture it.
Yeah, it's. I just remember it's what they, instead of Aerotech, they did a whole other system which I liked a lot better than BattleTech, because BattleTech made no sense to me. But the whole thing of the Lost Legion and things like that, where you're basically taking the Traveler's done that with their Imperium, where you're basically taking the Roman Republic and bringing that into like sci-fi, so you get the two.
Kind of like what Bo is doing a little, or in a different way.
I don't know if Bo's really doing it yet, because we're kind of in this little area.
Well, because with the nomenclature of the military units and things like that, I'm definitely getting a Roman vibe from him.
I am, but I'm thinking very much the same thing, where you go, you go full hog on that. Is just, you have the emperor, and then you have the consuls, and you have the senate, and then you have the centurions.
Yeah, I had a Doctor Who comic book when I was a kid where Rome never fell, and it was kind of sci-fi. They had like
I think I have that one. I think I have that one.
Yeah, it was an American comic, and they had like grab chariot races and stuff like that.
I think I have that one. I've also got this other really cool Doctor Who book. I'll have to show you one of these days. I'm going to pop one in, and then I'm going to go back to James, and then Justin. We'll keep the circle going around, because I want to kind of make a list of all the genres you can mix with sci-fi, and I'm going to go with just the obvious one, fantasy. I'm going to knock that one out of the park.
You mean Star Wars? No,
Star Wars, yeah.
Well, Star Wars is science fantasy.
I think even the newer Flash Gordon would qualify in a way. The 80s version, and Krull would definitely fall in there. Just to name a few. James.
They're doing Flash Gordon minis, by the way.
Who?
I heard about it on a podcast the other day, but they're 28mm metal, and you get like the Hawkman, and I'm trying to think of who the company is. I'll track it down and let you know.
Not Hydra, not the one they showed a while ago, right?
Maybe.
Because those are beautiful. Those are absolutely stunning.
Well, these guys were saying they were very impressive, so maybe that was it. Yeah.
I'm going to bring up, I guess, because people are talking about this, but I do kind of like the which, to be fair, you can throw a lot of these genres into your game. Yeah, it's just as little side quests kind of things in your game. It's not that it has to be part of your main campaign, but you can still. Let's not forget like Blade Runner with investigation. When you get a
film noir.
Yeah,
it's sci-fi noir. Yeah.
Well, I say that, but
Blade
Runner investigations, they still threw that in. Not that I enjoyed it that much, but they threw that in with the old what was the second Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. I mean, they threw in a little bit in there.
Another place that sounds really goofy, but there was an old cartoon called like Sherlock Holmes 2000 or 2100 or some crap like that, where it was Sherlock Holmes in the future. Like I could see that. You got another one for us, James?
Yeah, they did a version of the Phantom that was like that, and that was very much like pulp with sci-fi.
Yeah. It was around the same time. There was a whole wave of cartoons around that same time. It was in the 22nd century.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had 4 too, Shauner.
Yeah. For Shauner specifically, here you go. Right there, Shauner. 65 predation with laser dinosaurs and and human beings.
What was it? The cartoon Cadillac and Dinosaurs. You guys remember that?
Oh, I loved that. That whole, yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to actually be mixing a lot of that when I do my one of these days, my Amazing Adventures Nazi dinosaur cult adventure. I'm gonna do the whole, mix of all that stuff. I just gotta pick up some of the old Cadillacs and Dinosaurs books.
So it seems, Dr. Jones, that our dinosaurs are much hungrier than you expected.
Shauna, I absolutely freaking loved this book that you just mentioned. I still have it in my collection. Freaking loved it. It was goofy. Even as a kid, I'm like, well, yeah, I get, I got it, that this is a perfect, kind of mix. Mm-hmm. Hey, what's up, Fritz? Link's in there if you want to pop in and join us. Yeah, everything is great. It's April Fool's Day.
Yeah, I got Rickrolled like 3 times today.
You got what?
Rickrolled.
Oh, okay. Sorry to hear that. I think. I'm sure you took it like, standing up like a,
You deserve it.
I like the song, so it doesn't bother me.
I don't know. I was just for Shauna mentioning 65. I don't know. I heard bits and pieces of it, and people said it just kind of fell flat and was boring. I went, well, okay, I don't plan on seeing it. So
what do you got for us, Justin? Give me another genre.
Oh, I just had something too. Got distracted. There was a book I read maybe 2 years ago that was pretty fascinating, where some soldiers got transported back to like the caveman period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they had to survive.
I was thinking the Civil War from was it Robert Adams who wrote the Horse Clans?
I haven't heard of that one. Yeah. Oh, but yeah, any kind of transported back into the past kind of scenario is fun.
I don't mind as long as it's one way and one time. I don't like a lot of it. That said, is if you're going to talk about multidimensional, you might as well talk about something like a Sliders.
Yeah. No, you're like
I ran one of those.
You're thinking
not
like
the Star Trek method of flying backwards around the sun.
Fly backwards. That's
yeah. Although I can kind of almost see how that's a thing, not because of the Superman or the Star Trek, but you're going to need some sort of massive amount of power and gravity to break free from the normal time space. So I can kind of see that, but at the same time, I still like Planetary Romance meets Tech Level 16 Krypton. What do you mean by Planetary Romance, there, Shauna?
Come on, Shauna's got all these ideas. Shauna, pop on.
Yeah, I'll jump off.
Yeah, Shauna.
No, you don't. You I will unsub from you. Don't you dare.
I can leave before that, man.
No, we got 2 more spots.
I'm gonna make more coffee. I'm gonna make coffee and go back to listening in, but because it gets quite cacophonous when there's like 6 people on. So I'm quite happy to jump out and keep listening in. I've got
the link there. If you want to come back, you've always got a spot here and on Nathan's channel, or I will throttle him.
I was just waiting for him to say, "Let me drink fist." I'm like, I'm afraid to ask what's going on there, Shauna, until he said first. But
let me get drink.
This is what happens.
Shauna can't come on until
well, some people can't drink.
It's 10 o'clock somewhere.
No, I'm just afraid of the fact, how much you drink. Some people use fingers, for how much you're going to get for a shot, but I guess he uses fists.
He can't come on until at least half the bottle of Jack is gone.
No. That's Mage's Musings.
No. That's 3 bottles.
Well, yeah, he didn't realize how much he was drinking. He's like, "Hey, let me pour this," when they were doing their card game.
I had that happen to me once.
Well, which reminds me, Geek was playing for 8 hours today. Normally, for OSE game, I was like, wow, that's a little longer than I want to play.
Oh,
Who?
Ye Old Geek we played
Oh,
OSE
really?
today for 8 hours.
Wow.
Now, to be fair, there, Shadow, is you'd have to start at like 6 o'clock in the morning your time, but for me, for 8 o'clock.
So yeah, well, I'm up at 7 a.m. usually, so it wouldn't be that big a deal. It would just, lately I've been playing, Knights of the Old Republic because I got a new old Xbox, and that was the first thing I popped in, and I'm kind of already bummed because I'm like, I think about halfway through the game in a week, and I'm like, shit, I waited 20 years to play this again, and it'll be over in like 2 weeks. Shit, I need to slow down. So
you should
I'm
have
not
been
even going to
pacing
play
yourself.
today. Yeah, I need to pace myself. But
And
I figured
besides
5
that-
hours a day. That's fair, right?
Hey, 5 hours a day would be just enough for me to spend an entire month on The Witcher 3. So, I'm more depressed when I look at the number of hours I've played certain games and go, is this what I've done with my life?
Well, in all fairness, I haven't played a video game in 2 or 3 years. I think almost, like the first part of COVID, that might have been when I gave up on No Man's Sky and Elder Scrolls because No Man's Sky was just getting kind of boring because I'd done so much, and Elder Scrolls was just a money pit every month. If I didn't pay, I couldn't go to all the places that I'd opened up, and I'm like, you're freaking kidding me. There's literally almost nothing worthwhile doing.
So I'm gonna, we're talking about this, and of
I
course,
just want to say I have 12,000 hours in Space Engineers.
I have. Well, I don't have that. I have like 1,400 in Warhammer.
That's a lot, Justin. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna say this much, and I don't remember how
if you enjoy the hell out of it, though, then all I can say is I'm envious because I can't find a game that I could do that with that doesn't cost me either a crap ton of money or a crap ton of frustration with most of the games. I want a game like Elder Scrolls that's sci-fi, because with No Man's Sky there's like nobody to talk to except like these boring ass aliens that just have a very limited,
Is it even multiplayer?
It is.
No Man's Sky can be. It's a great game. It didn't start out that way.
I know.
But it really improved, and I got into it, after it had already made some of those really great improvements. And my son and I, we enjoyed the hell out of that game. But after a while, just building and mining and stuff, I didn't want that. I wanted something more like Elder Scrolls in space. That's why I like
cooperative. Yeah.
Well, not even cooperative, but where the NPCs, are interesting at least for 5 minutes and go on to the next one. But with lots of them, the ones in No Man's Sky they're just so two-dimensional. It's just I couldn't get into it. Even with Elder Scrolls, there's so many people that you can bump into and talk to. Even just a one-time conversation and move on. It just feels more like an RPG.
I'm gonna bring something up here. We're gonna talk about genres. What about, which I just, oddly enough, the good old bounty hunter. You just go out and do your, and I don't mean like the film noir, but more of the pulp, action, high fantasy. Of you bring them back and you get your reward.
I
like that as long as it doesn't become fetch quests.
Right, because I've done some similar things in real life, and I want something a little bit more lighthearted and not so, ugly. Yeah. I was thinking Dog the Bounty Hunter. When we were, bringing people home, it's a lot of the same mentality. because you have to worry about not just the person you're bringing home, but the people who are trying to keep you from bringing people home. And I was just hoping for something more like.
I'm talking Cowboy Bebop, which is kind of, lighthearted.
Yeah, I love that show. I'm really looking at something more like, imagine like a sort of an archaeologist in space going from planet to planet.
I was thinking indie.
Welcome to the show, Shauner.
Shauner.
Hello.
What are you drinking tonight?
Non-alcoholic beer.
Oh, okay. Right on.
Non-alcoholic.
Yeah, fake beer. Near beer.
It's an age thing. The older you get, the more you realize I don't really enjoy drinking.
I don't drink that often.
No, I can drink while I'm drinking a six-pack. I can drive while I'm drinking a six-pack.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Omanal.
Uh-oh. Yes.
You said you played 1,400 hours? No, 14,000 hours? How many hours did you play?
That was Justin. I was saying it was 1,400 hours in Warhammer.
Okay, so which Warhammer did you play?
The Total War 1, 2, and 3. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay, because I have Warhammer games in my Steam account, but I don't know. They're from like 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know which ones those are.
I love the Total War aspect. I really do. But come on, it's just so much fun sometimes just watching you cast a spell and it just wipes them all out. And, you get, big stompy monsters. I mean.
Oh, so you're doing the Total War version?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, mine's before those. Mine's like real-time strategy type stuff.
Yeah.
I did some of those like Dawn of War, but I didn't enjoy that as much. I like the Total War aspect because I like the campaign style on one side, and then I like to do in the battles at the beginning where I can kind of use tactics. But
I want something like the original Warcraft, or maybe Warcraft 2.
You mean Warcraft 2 or the original Warcraft?
Yeah, either one of them.
No, you probably want Warcraft 3.
I liked Warcraft 3.
Warcraft 3 was okay.
You do not want Warcraft 1. I know that. I know that.
Yeah. Well, obviously the mechanics and graphics aren't.
Yeah, 640 by 480, 12 color screen. You don't want that.
No, I just don't think they're making anything like that anymore, are they?
Well,
in Japan.
Well, there are a few, I guess, real-time strategy games, but I'm not familiar with them as well.
I know
you can go to Steam. There's indie companies making Steam games that are RTS.
I'm gonna, that's. I remember, boy, when StarCraft and Warcraft 3 came out, all of the mods that they used to make that used to let you play all sorts of different weird, you could do like role-playing games, you could do the war. I mean, it was fantastic. Like, you level up. Oh, you did this, and you can go on like your little quest, and they had everything. I mean, it was great, for some of that. It's we're talking about that. How about Dominion style play for the good old, if you're gonna be playing games, it would be awfully nice to actually do the whole Dominion, the domain style war game. Well, I say war game, but I mean, where you're building up your galactic empire. It seems like everyone's stuck into their one little ship and not doing anything. Like, no, I want to be the person.
You mean like Sins of the Solar Empire, but with Warhammer background?
I'd rather just play Sins of the Solar Empire.
Homeworld.
One of the longest games I played was a campaign of basically sci-fi domain play, and it was actually it was a lot of fun, but it's hard to ref or GM for that when you've got to come up with a whole new alien species that's gonna be in conflict, and I don't mean like political, I mean full on war. You literally got to break out the ping pong table and the grid map and miniatures, and it turns into mostly war games with like role play some stories to connect them, which I actually like that idea, especially if you're a miniatures fan and you like war gaming, but you want like the games to connect. You know what I mean? So you're not just playing random games. Come up with a way to role play the stuff in between. 4 to 8, 16 hours of role play. Then do a big battle and then go back to the story so that you can get the sort of miniature stuff out of the way. Because I as much as I do with miniatures, on the show, I don't really use them in gaming. I really just don't. I'm a theater of the mind guy who just happens to like painting miniatures.
Like when I played D&D last, we had miniatures on the table, but only as reference points because I already had them from wargaming, right? But the monster miniatures, we used the same miniatures for whatever monster was on the table. It was the same.
I remember those days.
Same goblins for a beholder, a giant, a dragon, whatever, right?
Use coins.
Well, I had them, right? That's why we used them.
No. I mean, but at a certain point, I actually just would rather use. I remember the chits. You just cut them out, and I like the skinny minis. There's several things. What I don't like is I don't like a tactical board game whenever I'm playing my RPG. Now that said, I don't mind it whenever we're talking about spatially knowing where everyone is. That's fine, but that's why I like zone systems.
We never used a grid or anything. It was just he's that close. It'll take X number of turns to get over to that one.
It wasn't until after I actually had lots of money, and even then I'd paint them, but I just by the time I set them down, the story's on to something else. You know what I mean? Everything should be so fast that I mean, I play board games, and I'll play like Shadows of Brimstone or Hero Quest or something when I want a quick fix of something like that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? But I want to get more into like the visuals, because I'm being lazy or whatever. But for the most part, I'd rather just just theater the minded all the way until you absolutely can't. And,
our table, like our play surface, was just the Formica of the counter. We didn't even have a battle mat or anything like that. Like, no, our map was a piece of paper that was a map, not like drawing squares for rooms. It was described by the DM. Remember what it looks like in your mind. It's the way we played.
So
hey, Shauner, something? Yeah, I didn't get a couple of genres from you to pop down here on Mixing.
Well, I don't know what planetary romance is exactly, but whenever I bring up certain genres, these old grognards say, "Oh, you're talking about planetary romance."
Okay.
So I'm guessing Adam Strange.
Really?
Strange.
Oh, I used to love those
from the 60s, I think. Yeah, he was a scientist, and he would go off like 3 million light year, or was 3 million miles away to some other planet, or 3 trillion miles away. Anyway, he would meet up with his girlfriend who lives on this other planet. She always had problems, and he would go there and solve problems for her race. But he only had 30 minutes to do it in, and then he would be back on Earth. You couldn't control how long he could stay there.
Okay.
Really, I don't remember
that's sort
that
of
aspect. Okay.
Yeah, he'll be in the middle of, he'll destroy the alien race that's invading their world or whatever, and he's getting ready to kiss his girlfriend, and then he just dissolves. And then she says, "I guess."
Strange, right?
Yeah, Adam Strange.
That's what I thought.
I think that's his name. And she would say, "I guess I guess his time's up. He's back on Earth. I hope he got back there okay." And then he has to wait a week before he can do it again.
Lucky bastard.
So he doesn't live on the planet, but he's always going there. I forget how he would get summoned. Somehow he would get summoned to go meet her somewhere. But that's a planetary romance in my book.
So it's
your girlfriend is an alien chick who's part human or whatever, and she lives on another planet. You can't just
like the romance in Earthworm Jim.
I guess.
I'm just looking The Sword and Laser. Well, that would be John Carter of Mars. You know.
Yeah, John Carter would be another romance in space, wouldn't it? Because
Yeah. There was something weird with that one, right? Because he would die all the time, and you'd have to dig him up in something. He'd be buried a certain way or something, so that his great grandkid could find.
He was temporarily put into suspended animation while he astrally traveled, which is my best description, to go to the world.
How many of those books were there anyway?
11 or 13.
Oh, 10 or 11. Yeah.
Some of those names get kind of hokey, like he ran out of ideas after a while, after the 20th book. Ping pong man of Mars, stuff like that.
He didn't have that random generator sheet that you're supposed to have for names.
Well, I thought he only did like 4 good ones at the most. Like Princess of Mars, the Gods of Mars, or something.
Warlord of Mars.
Warlord of Mars.
Chessmen of Mars.
Well, then it started going off on the ancillary characters he met, like Lana of Cathal, Thuvia of Mars, stuff like that. So started following
Which
off.
Were all children. To be honest, I liked everything Burroughs did. I can't honestly think of a single book that I read of his that I didn't like. Now, I haven't read like a lot of the Westerns and stuff. Those are on my list for this month to try to pick up and read some of those to see how it got, he and Carter. I'm very interested to see how these fantasy and science fiction writers actually did stories like that. I guess it was easier because of the time that they were alive, that was still a genre that was really popular, and obviously one of my favorite genres to mix with sci-fi because it melds so well. And I've got a good list here. I'm going to write down the obvious ones, like post-apocalyptic, things like that, superhero, because I think superhero is a form of sci-fi because it's got all this science and goofy stuff, even if you do have, Doctor Strange and the Black Knight hanging out with, Iron Man or Moon Knight or whatever. To me, it just seems like that's what you'd have to categorize it.
Any of you ever read? Oh, continue.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say, any of you ever read the books Empire of Man by David Weber and John Ringo? No, I recommend them.
I'm writing it down, Justin. Writing it down.
Cyberpunk, if we're going to be mentioning, because that kind of does the dystopian future. That's a little bit different.
Who are those by, Justin, so I can write that down?
David Weber and John Ringo.
I'm going to mention one that I don't think we've mentioned. What about the which is completely different than most of the others, but I guess it kind of works out if you're doing like Gamma World and Mutant Call Classics, where you are the opposite, which is you are the ignorant savage that is being brought up into the alien. And so you're the ignorant savage among all of the high aliens.
Like Encino Man kind of thing, but more so.
I was thinking, could you imagine bringing
or Buck Rogers in the 25th century?
I'm thinking like someone from the Paleo era, and then bringing him up into like Buck Rogers, and then they have to, Buck Rogers is kind of like that way, but going even further back. So now they're like, Oog, which
the Flintstones Jetson special.
Yeah, but it's like. Oog make fire.
I want to get into the next questions before I run out of time.
But Flash Gordon would also be planetary romance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the big question?
The next one is, why do you think sci-fi is so easily integrated to all the other genres, where it seems like the other ones not so much? Or maybe I'm missing that. I'm sure you could find certain cases for each, but to me it seems like sci-fi is always asking for like a third of some other genre mixed in.
I can't remember who said it, but it's been coined sci-fi is a setting, not a genre. It's the set dressing to an environment. It's not a story device itself.
I think part of why you're
I don't
talking
know if I
about.
agree with that.
I don't disagree with that, actually. I think that's probably true. Well, it's the same thing with fantasy. I think part of the problem that you're having is that there's such a resistance by a lot of people towards science fiction because people feel like fantasy they know, and science fiction is what is possible, not what has occurred. I mean, it sounds odd if we have dragons. Well,
It seems like to me, I've never been able to understand that. To me, it seems like, mind you, I grew up more sci-fi in my early development than fantasy. I had to, pop into that later when I was like 14. It seems like, here we are in, the modern age, which, sci-fi is just a couple of days away, you know what I mean? As opposed to thousands of years away for other genres or fantasy, at least. It seems like sci-fi would be a more easy to digest era, or genre for people to digest.
Sci-fi uses science. Science is everywhere.
I'm going to bring up something, which is people have a romanticized view of the past, and
a fearful one of the future.
Well, I'm not even going to say it's necessarily a fear. That the problem is that it's not as relatable because fear is a potential of what could occur. So when people look at it, it's very easy when you look ahead. How do you want to say it? Like you're saying with the Planetary Romance, a lot of the books aren't coming out that way. They're coming out more dystopian, and it's not a hopeful future. It is a more bleak future. Whereas when we were growing up as kids, John Carter of Mars was, or Flash Gordon, and all these others were aspirational. Even Buck Rogers, they were aspirational.
I'll put it to you this way. I don't think people would hate the new generation of Star Trek TV shows if they still had the pastel carpets. I honestly don't. I don't think people would hate them as much if they still had a cheerful look to them.
Well, the problem that I have with all of it is that I think that people, looking at what's going out there, look at almost all the science fiction that goes out. It's almost dysfunctional dystopian nowadays. Whereas when we were growing up, well, Justin, you're not in the same group. We're all talking like the 1970s. Buck Rogers, all these were
Soda Green, Saturn Running, Blade Runner.
Yeah, I know all the stuff.
Even Alien was, kind of,
dark.
Well, those were 80s though. A lot of those were 80s. Whereas
the first three.
Well, no, but a lot of them.
Logan's Run.
It was getting kind of mixed in, but look at the Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers was not even though that they had some of that, but Buck Rogers was from the 50s. We had the Jetsons. It was aspirational of look at what science can do to make your life better.
And nowadays, even in cases like Buck Rogers, where there was like a nuclear disaster, you could see them building back up. It wasn't the decline; it was the ascension.
Yes.
And there's not even the attempt to do that now. It's just grind it down further, make it worse.
And as much as we're talking about the past, is if you really go back and look at it, it is, we're living in a much better time than they were then. But people have a romanticized view. They aren't talking about all the people that died of scurvy, or if they broke a tooth, it got infected and went up to their brain and put them in a coma. Or that's what I think is the real difference between why one has become more popular than the other, is just that aspect. And that's why a lot of people love Star Wars, because Star Wars tends to be more aspirational than dystopian. Whereas I'm not saying that we didn't have the negative stuff. We can look at it, but it was either really cheesy from that time. But even Star Trek had a utopian view. When you look at it, so
and that's just a choice to put that on there. That's why I was getting with the pastel carpets, right? It's the choice to put that in there, and they're just not. It's sheer laziness why they're not doing it too.
Is 1984 a sci-fi movie?
I think it Would be. Well, yeah, it is, but I don't
It takes place in the future.
Is there science? I mean, so if something takes place in the future, it's going to be science fiction then?
Yeah, if it takes place either in the future, because you don't have to progress science to be science fiction if it's done intentionally, right? If you're stripping away technology.
What if it's done in the past? What if the movie takes place in the past? Is it science fiction?
Yeah, a lot of Sherlock Holmes would qualify as science fiction.
I don't think it would, though. Any science fiction is forward-looking and fantasy's past.
Is there science in Sherlock Holmes movies?
Yeah, he does.
Well, what about Jules Verne?
Well,
see, most of his stuff.
Well, his Jules Verne is going forward in time, so that's what I'm saying.
Well, Jules Verne, his characters describe the science behind what they were doing.
Yeah,
just like Mary Shelley used science to describe what Frankenstein was doing.
Yep.
I agree.
If science isn't being described,
I totally agree.
But if you're just driving a futuristic car, if the only difference in the movie is futuristic cars, is it science fiction though? People are still just driving cars. Okay, like in Logan. Logan takes place, 3 years from now? And there's
Run?
AI trucks driving around on the freeways and stuff.
Oh, no, Logan, different one. Yeah. Well,
was that sci-fi?
Yes. Well, but that comes back to the superhero thing too.
So what's the difference between a dystopia and a sci-fi movie?
I'm not saying that there's the difference between a dystopia is science. And this is what I was saying with Buck Rogers is it aspirational or is it saying that things are getting worse? That's the two differences, because generally the feeling is, like John Carter, you feel that things are going better, even though the world is collapsing. You still feel that the world is going to be a better place after John Carter from Mars.
If things are getting better, then it's sci-fi?
What's that?
Or if things are getting better, then it's sci-fi? Or if things are getting worse, it's sci-fi?
No. It's the popularity of one versus the other. That's what I'm referring to.
Popularity of the story?
Well, dystopian would mean that things are getting worse, and aspirational means that things will get better. And nowadays it seems like aspirational is not really present in most science fiction.
That's like a utopia kind of a thing? Like no one's going to die from cancer anymore kind of a thing?
Is that
sci-fi?
Well, that's
well, they're all sci-fi. Like you can. Those are
sci-fi.
Those are.
I mean, sci-fi is
not the same as.
Sci-fi. I thought sci-fi was just Star Trek and Star Wars in 2001.
I think you're trolling right now.
Well, no, I mean, but Sean, a lot of times.
So everything's sci-fi now?
Yes, they're looking forward. Well, actually, at this point,
but now everything is sci-fi. Everything.
What if sci-fi is whatever? Sci-fi. What if sci-fi is whatever the population or general public thinks is interesting to buy and watch and read? Because each generation seems to have its own kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, I don't know, because then that opens up the floodgates for things like Twilight, and
Twilight
that was massively
is the best
popular
thing ever written.
And that was
Twilight,
definitely.
I hate to say this, but Twilight is just young adult. That's all it is YA. Because Barnes & Noble says so.
Well,
if Barnes & Noble calls your book sci-fi, which Harlan Ellison hated his books being put in the sci-fi section of Barnes & Noble, because he would say that he was not a sci-fi writer. But Barnes & Noble would just lump his books in there with Asimov books.
What the hell were they then?
Harlan Ellison is a subversive.
They were philosophical.
Yeah, philosophy is an important part of sci-fi, but
dealing with human, like what's a human kind of a thing.
That's like Terry Goodkind saying his books weren't fantasy. Makes no sense.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that I look at it is why I think we were talking originally about why is fantasy more popular than sci-fi. And I think, again, it just comes down to what people growing up with. The other part is with fantasies, look at all the people who grew up with Harry Potter. And Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. So you have like two mega things out there that people just loved and read book after book after book.
When I was a kid, fantasy was liked more because you didn't have to think. You just turn your brain off and watch Wizard of Oz or whatever, and you had fun. You got to leave Kansas and go somewhere else for a bit. Sci-fi was a different thing. Things to Come, 1933. People watched that movie. It was too close to the political situation at the time. You got the commies and you got the Americans. Back then, even, watching that movie, H.G. Wells had a view of how, if you watch Things to Come, basically what happened in that movie is happening now. So people are upset that science fiction is scary because it can happen. It's going to be the future. Only smart people are going to control the dopes that, in Democrat views. You got the elites. The Hollywood types know what they're talking about. So obviously, go see their movies, give them millions of dollars, let them live in their mansions because they're the elite. They're telling us about the icebergs and the polar bears and all that kind of stuff. When ice melts in water, water actually goes down when ice melts in water. It doesn't go up. But they'll never say that. You don't have Mr. Wizard anymore to tell you what science is.
No, yeah, Bill, the science guy. Bill Nye, the science guy.
Follow the science.
Who doesn't even know science.
Now science is 52 genders.
Well,
just 52? You're off by a factor of 10.
No. To me, we're living in a dystopia right now, and you got Big Brother telling us how to think and
I think
how much gas to buy and where to drive and what kind of jobs we can have.
Well, that's why I'm just saying that between the two is, a lot of people always view it as the world is getting worse or it's not getting better for your little victories in sci-fi. We're just talking about popularity in this.
Like the Forbin Project. They build that computer. It's going to be smart enough to protect the U.S. from any kind of attack from Russia. And the instant they turn it on, it goes and finds that the Russians built a copy of it somewhere. And the two of them get together and they start blowing up the Earth if the humans don't do what the computer wants them to do. So all of a sudden, overnight, their whole world, their utopian view turns into a complete totalitarianistic government. Overnight.
Yeah.
So I would say Earth is on the downward spiral at that point.
No, I agree with you, but that's my point of why people don't like science fiction so much.
Science fiction is scary because you're dabbling with unknown witchcraft, and only smart people. You can't trust smart people because they're going to try to control us with their robotic brains and AIs and things. People are scared, but fantasy, like I said, you just watch it. It's popcorn. It's never going to happen. It's fantasy. Lord of the Rings. That's never going to happen.
Everybody knows.
We don't have to worry about. But then you got the Shannara Chronicles, where in the future that shit happens. Elves come out of the ground.
Everybody knows some guy is not going to throw a fireball at them. They don't know they're not going to point a laser pistol at you.
You know what?
Could happen,
all you have
probably.
to do is go near a gas pipeline and done. Then let's talk fireballs.
Earth of the New Sun could happen,
you know what I mean.
But that's a million years from now.
No, it's. I mean, there are certain things but I'm just referring to why one was more popular than the other. It's not that you can't take the same things in there. Let's be honest. I know, like Shadow and myself, I think that we kind of like the pulpy aspect of sci-fi. That's
like Prince Valiant. People read Prince Valiant. It was a five and dime store, or whatever, and everyone lived. But when the robots were invading comic books, parents were saying, "Oh, that's going to rot your brain," go outside, fresh air nonsense. And the kids like, no, I'm going to read about this alien invasion. And the kids grow up with pocket protectors and they doing the slide rule thing and they start working for NASA.
Hey, shut up. Just because I did that. No.
Star Trek comes out. Everyone who watched Star Trek as a kid works for either Apple or IBM or Microsoft or PayPal, whatever. It inspired them to do something.
I watched Star Trek growing up as a kid, and I ended up here. Well, but I am retired. I've been retired for 20 years, so I must have done something right.
Well,
ended up on Earth.
Go look at the different times. I'm not saying we didn't have some of the dystopian stuff, but the 70s was very aspirational. We watched television and things, 60s, 70s. And then you go over into the 1980s, and you still have things like Ice Pirates and some things where the good... And Star Wars.
Remember when people didn't want to go to the moon? They thought that money could be spent on starving children somewhere.
Hey! I'm going to mention this much: the only reason we went to the moon is so we could improve our ballistic rockets to shoot off nuclear weapons, and this was the way of getting the public to support it. That's why we went to the moon.
We got microwave ovens from going to the moon.
We had microwave ovens in the 90s.
Color television. We got all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
From moon stuff.
Way back.
Yeah, they used
radar ranges
to sterilize
the radar range. Yeah.
Oh.
But no, these are the things that I have to laugh at. We got Velcro and Tang. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got space sticks and Tang.
Yeah.
We found out what kind of seeds grow well or bad in 0G, or they call it microgravity.
And let's not forget the pen that can write upside down and underwater.
Tang, Velcro. People are chiming in.
Yeah, my brother had a space pen.
The commies just gave them pencils.
Well,
Velcro came from that.
Who has done science? You use pencils all the time because it doesn't react as much as the inks do everywhere. If you ever do chemistry.
Hey, we learned not to use pure oxygen inside of space rockets.
It never took off.
And then the Russians learned a heck of a lot of stuff.
I'm not saying that people don't. I just have to laugh whenever I look at it now and I will say this. We have never been to the moon in my lifetime.
Definitely not mine.
And people laugh at that. They're like, "No, yes, we have." And I said, "Oh, really? That's 1972 is the last time in December. What does that tell you? Something's way off." Do you remember the 1980s? Yeah. Talk about when they sent the teacher up into space, or they were going to on the space shuttle before it blew up. Do you remember how we all thought that we were going to go into space at some point and have all of this? It was a very aspirational aspect, and then it blew up. And I remember all these people crying, and I just was like, it's dangerous because my father was a pilot. I'm like, yes, people die in these things. They're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, the point was people thought they were getting the risk of failures down when they put a teacher on board.
It was a 1%. Well, it's not that I'm against it, but it was one of these things that, but the idea was that anyone could be able to go up in
space.
Same here,
Grandma. I remember that day. Yeah. But I also remember when we landed on the moon. So, I was in diapers, but I actually have that memory because my parents were, watching it on TV and just freaking out, I literally have no memory of my parents that excited over anything they ever watched on TV in my whole life, except that. So, to be honest, I find it hard to believe that we haven't done anything that was like covert. You know what I mean? With all the black budget projects that are out there and all the trillions of dollars that have been spent in my lifetime on things that we'll never know about, I find it hard to believe that we've never done something, below board, on the QT that the general public didn't get to know about. Whether it was, maybe making like a one of those
they do put satellites up all the time. No,
right. I'm gonna bring up something because we are talking about this, and which was not a dystopian aspect. Is let's not forget Stargate in the 1990s. I don't think that we really went deep into the dystopian stuff until like 2000, where basically everything was dystopian.
Well, it's not even that. Even the dystopian stuff before that had the glimmering light of potentiality. You just don't get anything at all. It's the absolute essence of edgelordness in all writing.
I know. It is. And
each generation had its own bad guy. So the generation before me was scared to death of MAD.
Yep.
And then in the late 80s, that kind of went away. And
what,
MAD.
Connor?
Mutual assured destruction.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Cold War.
Everyone
thought that the Russian sci-fi try to have like an underlying message in your sci-fi movie that the Russians are still doing their thing, you know.
Yeah.
And the Russians at the same time were making sci-fi movies.
That the Russians were still doing their thing.
And their movies were super optimistic as far as, you know, Mother Russia's going to go colonize all the planets and do star travel, and
speaking of which,
everyone's going to be a comrade going to space.
Robotech,
and only now those movies are being released because they were just banned by Russia itself. You couldn't see those movies.
Really?
Come out.
During the Cold War or after? Because I'm wondering if they were banned.
Most of these movies were made in the 50s and 60s, 70s. They couldn't be shown in Russia.
Okay.
Because Putin, you know, whatever.
Well, that
the
was
guy before Putin
wasn't in charge.
It was Putin, then it was another guy, then it was Putin again. Anyway,
that's me.
They put all those movies, buried them somewhere. For whatever reason, Putin's releasing them or letting them go out into the wild. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
because they're actually good movies.
But have they been doing that in Russia since the 90s, and we're just getting them now?
Oh, I don't know.
So far,
they're waiting like 30 years before they release these things. So
I'd love to see
I don't know
some of that.
If the Russians have made anything new.
They're making stuff.
Well,
movies like Nostalgia and Stalker, those came out when they were made.
Well, I think part of the problem is people just don't like reading subtitles. I mean, I still enjoyed, speaking of fantasy, I enjoyed, what was that? Brotherhood of the Wolf.
Brotherhood of the Wolf was good, and I can't stand subtitles myself.
I love subtitles. But
French is an evil language.
Akira
I don't care if it's dubbed or if it's subtitled or both. It doesn't matter to me.
But I have a feeling in the coming revolution of AI, we'll never have to worry about that again. Because they're already doing pretty good voice and face transcript stuff.
Well, by next year, we'll see presidential people. Even now, we see Biden doing speeches, and he talks perfect. So you know that's an AI doing his face and his voice and his speech. And they're putting it on Twitter. And people are like, yeah, that's what our president needs to say right, at this moment in time. But it's not even him. It's an AI. Some 14-year-old kid's just posting it as Fox News reports. Joe Biden,
Well,
it looks legit.
Obama, Trump, and Biden playing D&D with Ben Shapiro. Those were pretty funny.
Yeah, those were done a while ago. If they do them again with the 5th gen AI, it would look perfect.
Yeah, and they're even integrating that stuff into video games. Like the next generation of video games, you'll be able to talk to the characters just like we're talking right now, and they'll have full dialogue to like random stuff relevant to the world.
Yes, somebody gave Skyrim to an AI to learn, and the AI knows all the NPCs' voices and what they say in the game, and it can generate all new lines and new quests and new stories from what's been happening in the game. And they make mods out of that, and I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. Saves so much time.
That is pretty epic.
Because otherwise, the modder has to splice and dice sentences to make new sentences from the recorded words and try to come up with some decent story, like what happens after you become Dragonborn, that kind of thing. When the AI just goes, well, naturally this occurs.
But I was watching a thing earlier. I was watching a thing earlier where they were just doing that for an wholly original game with a new character and everything, and the AI was creating.
I mean, the AI isn't. The AI is just a tool, though. It is an expert system. It's just doing what a human is lazy to do. That's all.
Well,
you or me might take 6 months to write a sci-fi story, a movie, or whatever. The AI doesn't know what it's doing. It's just doing what it's learned to do. It's only doing what it
independently.
Computers only do what they're programmed to do, and the AI is learned how to do something really, really, really good, like play chess or drive a car, or write a screenplay, or do voice acting or whatever. And in a week, an AI can make a movie.
I'm gonna say though is I want one of you to go into whoever's using AI art and type in Triceratops and explain to me why I keep getting a rhinoceros with 3 horns.
Because it's trained on rhinoceros with 3-horned images.
Well, you give it a source image. Give it a source image and then work from that.
Yes.
Yeah. You can download the program onto your hard drive and give it specific images to work off of, and it will work off that image instead of whatever the batch library, the online version, is working
Yeah,
off of.
what Sean Cherry says, it's not even AI. It's just an expert system.
Yeah.
It's like talking to Shakespeare, and Shakespeare just tells you random, brand new story soap operas that he's just written recently. But the AI is just taking his ideas, his style of writing, and coming up with new stuff. That's all. The AI can't start making machine guns, strapping them to laser beams, and going out into the neighborhood and shooting people. Unless the AI is programmed to do that, it can't happen.
Right, not yet.
Well,
I pray for the day.
well, good.
If you can get an AI to program another AI, then we're talking. Now we're talking.
Now,
here's where we get back to dystopian, and we're going to go back to genre, which is this is why people don't like a lot of the bit, because they don't want to play ultra gritty games. They want to, like Shadow says, they want to escape. They want to be the hero. And we've gotten away from a lot of that in most of the sci-fi games out there.
Yeah. I like light and bouncy. That's why I joked and said Regency sci-fi earlier, because, you can have fun telling a romantic story if you're not getting graphically detailed with it.
What's the question of the day right now? What's the worst crime? Shooting a bunch of kids in a school, or someone misgendering some crazy guy with lipstick?
Someone misgendering somebody, don't you know?
So what is the AI? Let's say the AI. Let's say, 3 years from now, for a reason, we have the Superior Court run by AI. What is the AI going to choose as the crime there?
Misgendering, because it will be programmed to by the people who are in charge.
No, I'm going to.
So if you're Elon Musk right now is warning people that the internet is covered, just caked with woke articles, and that's what the AIs are learning from, is whatever's on the internet.
Right.
No, well, here's the problem: is the programmers are also making sure that's the only thing that they go for. But I'm going to
they don't filter it out.
But I'm going to bring up the other part is the United States is in severe decline, along with all of the West, and really it's going to be the past and the Chinese and the Russians. Which is, do you think they're going to? And they aren't playing in this whole woke thing. So we're getting authoritarian either way. Either you can get authoritarian classical view, or you can get authoritarian with the woke view. Either way, it's not going in a positive direction. But I want to go back over and talk about aspirational genres, where they're trying to go with the dystopian crap.
Okay, take the science from Wizard of Oz. Do they mention science in that movie at all?
There are clockwork men.
Because they got the Tin Man, and he needs a heart.
Oil.
Did he give him a heart, or just a TikTok thing?
He just gave him a
TikTok thing. It was a heart-shaped watch.
Okay, so he was making the characters feel better about themselves. Like, here's a diploma, you're now smart.
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
I think
they're running out of time. They had to end the movie. 90 minutes is too long for a movie back then.
Was it any different in the book? I can't remember. It's been.
I have no idea. The book looks
anyone
crazy.
Remember Return to Oz?
Yeah, there was. I think it was like.
That's why it's a TikTok man, because that was the mayor of.
That was interesting, watching some of that.
Is there science in the 10 Commandments?
No.
I wouldn't say.
Carpenter.
Not Ben-Hur. Well, actually, no, because we were just watching it last night, and they were showing the raising of the obelisk with theories, with the sand and the counterweights and stuff like that.
Moses was he was managing like some sort of architectural project or something.
Yeah.
And before he got outed, and then but afterwards, I don't know. If you take the Bible literally, it doesn't make any sense, but the Bible was written in the context of how people lived back in the day, and hardly anyone today knows how people lived 2,500 years ago.
People hardly know how people lived 50 years.
Oh, people don't know how people don't know how their great grandparents
lived last week.
Like, I don't know, my great grandparent. I don't know what they did day to day in 1905. I have no clue. I have none. I just have one picture of them. That's it.
Anyone, which I find interesting is Little House on the Prairie. Go read that and go look at it, and you'll go, just not that I've read, but I've been hearing my son's mother talk about all the stuff that they had to deal with, and you went, "Oh, you're talking about I want to be a strong, independent woman," except you break down and cry because someone misgenders you. In the meantime, your grandmother lost like 4 of her siblings, half of her children, with
cholera,
and guess what? She still could kick your ass, and you're like, "Oh, but she wasn't an empowered woman." Like, that woman was as tough as nails.
No shit.
Some of them had dirt floors in their cabins.
I mean, you want to go over it. It was like, oh, really? Let me tell you this much: if you're gonna cry because someone says something mean to you, go back talk your grandmother, and then you tell me how many times you got beaten. I talked to one guy who backmouthed his grandmother, got beaten 6 times. If he backtalked his father, it would have been just once. And you tell me who is on the hierarchy.
It wasn't 6 times consecutively. It was just whenever she remembered.
No. It was his grandfather, his grandmother, his mother, his father, his uncle. It was everyone that found out about it beat your ass because you badmouthed your grandmother. It's like, that's power. I don't care how anyone puts it.
So have sci-fi movies gotten better or worse in the last 20 years?
Depends on what your criteria is.
I think a little bit of both, to be honest. Yeah. I've been looking high and low for different sci-fi things, and there's some really good stuff out there. One of my all-time favorites things that I've discovered in the last 2 years was Love, Death, and Robots. It's an anime series of shorts. It's got a lot of really, interesting things because they're all like, 20 minutes or less, sometimes only 10 minutes. But it just shows there's a lot of people out there, working on stuff. But by and large, it is got that element of fear in it more than the aspirational aspects, which we really need, another brand new kind of,
I'm getting ready for bed, please.
Big blockbuster trilogy or series or something like that to really, because we're like a gnat's wing away from hitting the second space race. If we were to get another Kennedy or something like that to really push us.
The next space race will be between Russia and China, not between anyone on this side.
Well, did you guys see Interstellar?
Right, I'm gonna.
No, I haven't seen that yet.
I think the series have gotten a lot better. I don't know if the movies have, because you get the series like The Expanse. If we're going to talk last 20 years, I enjoyed Farscape. We had Battlestar Galactica. All great series from that, I believe.
I think Farscape was one of the first things that I couldn't stand the darkness in.
Yeah, but were those shows sci-fi though, or were they just about human drama?
Well, human drama.
To me, you have to have
Game of Thrones and space kind of stuff.
I don't. Yeah, but this was all before Game of Thrones, the ones I just mentioned.
I hate to tell you this.
Series-wise,
there was Game of Thrones before there was Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but series-wise,
it's
called Amber. It's called Amber.
Doesn't negate science fiction.
But series-wise, they're all a lot better overall. The reason I liked Farscape is because it was the first place that actually had non-human aliens. That were main characters.
Well, Babylon 5 had that one scene, but other than that, you're right. Oh,
what about the Horta from Star Trek?
Yeah, there was that too.
Well, see, I got mad.
The giant hamburger patty. We used to,
Are they making sci-fi shows anymore as in depth that make you think as much as the first 2 pilots for the original Star Trek?
I don't
know because I grew up on
by
Star Trek.
sci-fi authors.
Well, I mean, I grew up
both
with
dealing
Trek,
with psionics and stuff.
I don't know if it really counts, just because I looked at the stuff and to me it was just so normal. It didn't even register by the time.
We take it for granted.
Yeah.
But now you look for sci-fi now, and it's like it's hard to find stuff like that even being made because the woke crowd goes into a tizzy fit.
Well,
if you even have attractive women.
But that's why I mentioned those things that were.
Can you do a green girl now? If you had the budget still, could you do a green girl?
An Orion sex slave? No.
Let's not forget that was really good.
Dust. You guys ever watch the Dust channel on YouTube?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
Dust. Yeah, it's pretty good.
That used to be good. That used to have some good sci-fi in it. But lately, when I watch little 20-minute short film, it's all about lesbians. Where are the men? There's no men in the show. What's going on?
You noticed that too, huh?
You know what?
I unsubscribed.
Part of the problem. Part of the problem with that, Shawner, is that I've noticed that a lot of us nerdy guys have a thing for lesbians. I don't know where that came around, but
1980s indoctrination.
Nerdy guys have a thing for lesbians?
I just don't like men being involved whenever I have to see,
I've never heard of this. Have you seen a lesbian lately?
Well,
that's the problem.
I know what you mean. Well, it stems from back in the I want to go with the 80s. There was, I started noticing that.
What happened?
I live,
my time machine can go back to the 80s. Do we need to fix something? Is there something that needs fixing?
You know what? I've never mentioned something.
Something specific.
We're all mentioning this stuff. Let's not forget, if we're going to talk about look at the difference between
Back to the Future. Remove Back to the Future from existence, and it will be a better.
No, not Back to the Future. I'm thinking.
That one has a
hey, welcome, Kevin.
What was the other one that they had? Was Total Recall. Look at how bad.
Sorry, guys, I missed your chats. I was doing stuff you don't want to know about.
But I mean, look at Total Recall and how they remade it, and it was just bad. It was boring. It wasn't fun. That's the other part. Science fiction used to just be fun. It used to be, even when it was tongue in cheek, it was still fun.
Once again, I think even that, a little bit of pacing tweaks and the color balance of the movie would have made it far more enjoyable.
But why? Here's the thing: why remake a movie that's much better in the original? And I mean, the same thing happened with RoboCop. I was like, no,
that was just hot trash.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Total Recall.
Yep. But Total Recall was fun.
Well, you have to do something with the IP, otherwise you lose the IP. So they have to release something.
Yeah.
Some garbage out there.
Once again, that was edgelords in charge of, like, let's make it flashier and glitzier than the original, when the point of the way it was done in the first place was to make it look not flashy and glitzy, right? If they had made RoboCop look more like a piece of industrial equipment instead of less like a piece of industrial equipment, it would have been better.
Well, the problem that I have with it is it didn't have the emotion. It didn't have a lot of the other aspects to it. It was just. I think this is part of the problem of, and I'm going to bring up this a little bit because you talked about superheroes. The reason that people enjoy superheroes is it's aspirational. It's inspiring. It's the classic, whether you look at it as not, gods or demigods that are going to war, and the good triumphs over evil. You have a lot of that. But nowadays, it's kind of, people are either phoning it in or they're not going through the good old character arc. And I really blame a lot of the colleges.
Or they're woke as hell. Because, for a while, with the original Iron Man movies and things like that, it looked like it had, an endless potential, and then we got hit with the woke tsunami, and then every Marvel movie that came out from a certain point just sucked.
Yeah, Disney bought Marvel, and that was the end of that.
Well, I mean, Disney owned Marvel for that time, didn't they?
No. They didn't until around the time the first Guardians of the
The
Galaxy.
third
movie
Iron
came out.
Man, second
Okay, I'm gonna
Captain
bring
America.
I'm going to bring the other part though. Is this is also when you started having changing of the guard, where they got rid. Well, anyone remember the show Heroes, and remember when they got rid of the well, but as soon as they went on
the
strike,
writers' strike destroyed that. Yeah,
But
the show was incredible.
J.J. Abrams was like the changing of the guard was taking away his restraint. He was the one that wanted to push that crap. Not hiring him in the first place or allowing him anywhere near cinema would have prevented more of this stuff happening.
You know what? No. Here's the problem when we're talking about changing the guard, and this happened in the '90s. Is they got rid of people learning great literature that survived for thousands of years.
Well, in education.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, guess what happens when these people graduate for education? They try getting jobs. You know, that's the problem that you get with it.
Well, in Hollywood, it's who you know.
Yep.
Well, who you're related to.
And how weird you are.
Yeah.
Basically, Sean, how many times you've been to Epstein Island is really what it boils down to.
He's
basically
in the family tree.
But the thing with superheroes, it's about the superheroes are the good guys, and they don't kill anyone, and they themselves never get killed. So in a way, it's uplifting, good, always a happy ending sort of thing, until Chris Claremont shows up and does his X-Men back in the late 70s. Now all of a sudden, it's like edgelord superheroes. They're anti-superheroes. They're muties. They're
you can have
people are dying. People are dying in that comic book.
Yeah. X-Men was really the period that you're talking about. From.
And then Frank Miller did his Batman 10 years later.
Yeah, Dark Knight Triumphant, all that. Exactly. That was almost the beginning of the end. It was the beginning of where it got good, but it was also, counting down to when it was going to turn to suck, because it eventually all did. Roughly.
Well, when you make the superheroes live in a real world, and the real world begins to suck, then the superhero stories begin to suck, because you're dragging in all the real world nonsense into the stories.
What was it? What's the Van Sciver? Ethan Van Sciver? You guys know him?
I know who you're referring to with Cyberfrog.
Cyberfrog.
Yeah, he
was also
talking.
Did the Green Lantern.
Yeah,
he was talking about when he was on. I believe it was the Green Lantern. Getting into shit for drawing the guns too realistic.
Yeah.
Well, I also remember him talking about, which is what he said he was remembered for, was he didn't know anything about Green Lantern when they told him to start drawing. He said, okay, let me figure out why this character is why people love this character so much. And they went back to understand the very fundamentals of that aspect. And the problem nowadays is, let's be honest.
They erase the history now.
Well, not only they're erasing the history, they're erasing the very character. Like the one lady who they let have Batman, and what she did is, well, I'm going to make it a love triangle between Selena and Batman's going to be this rich boy in high school, and then we're going to also have the Jokers. I kid you not, you're laughing, but this is literally what happened.
I know where you're going. I know. I heard about it.
Wow.
People don't respect.
Oh my God.
No. I mean, this is that. Well, and here's the problem. It's
only time you have a superhero in high school is when the words spider and name are in his name in that order with no other words.
No, Batman 2099 or whatever, the Batman Beyond was pretty cool.
I thought he was just out of.
Nope, he was in high school. If you actually watch
pretty much these days, all the superheroes are the exact opposite. Sex-wise, gender-wise, identity-wise.
Well, the problem I'm having with it is these people project themselves into there instead of trying to understand what makes them great.
Yeah, they won't make a new character, so they'll wreck an existing character, because that's what Democrats do. They only wreck things. They don't create anything.
it's not just that.
And they're running the government now.
When they do create an original character to be that, and it's not instantly first issue as popular as Superman or Spider-Man at their height, that's absurd bigotry to the highest nth, right?
Well,
New Warriors, anybody?
Well,
you guys remember that?
What was that? Which one?
Remember the New Warriors, the recent New Warriors, where they had Safe Face, Snowflake.
Yeah, that was garbage.
Yeah.
Well, that was literally that was the moment we should have all taken notice that.
Well, that was the leftists trying to make fun of right wingers, naming them all that kind of stuff, right?
Well,
and boy, did that work, didn't it?
Yeah.
Well. Here's the thing that gets me about it is the people. If you look at Stanley and a lot of these others, they looked at the original characters and they said, and all of us, well, for the most part, again, I don't know about you, Justin, we grew up with Norse mythology, Greek mythology, whatever other mythology you had.
That stuff was still around when I was in school, but
okay, well, yeah, but I'm saying, but we had Shakespeare. We also had the Bible. And you're looking at stories that lasted 500 plus years, so over half a millennium.
King Arthur, Robin Hood.
Yeah, I mean, and we had those. Plus, we had the old movies. These people coming up. Oh, I don't want to learn Shakespeare. I don't want to do this. And the problem is that they haven't learned storytelling.
What was
and
it?
Instead,
Yale?
You can tell woke stories. People told woke stories back in the 30s that were popular. The problem is that they knew how to tell a story. Nowadays, these people don't even build it up.
What was it? Yale removed Shakespeare from the English course because it was white supremacy.
Well, schools are seminaries now to teach communism. That's all they're about. That's all they're for.
Well, they've been that way since the 60s.
Not all of them. You saw how Jackie turned out.
Yeah.
And he's not an anomaly. Believe it or not, his generation.
He's a lot rarer than you think.
Well, he resisted.
Well, no, he's actually got a lot of friends at school that are the same way. They're the next generation that's going to stomp on the woke generation when we're too old to do so. There is hope. They're out there.
Yeah.
And, like I said about the thing at the beginning, a certain group of people are eliminating their own ability to reproduce in a myriad of ways that, we won't get to see it, but there's hope out there, guys.
I'm going to bring up another part. It's just not fun. If you look at the authoritarians, they aren't fun. No one wants to be around these people. They're not humorous. They're not fun. They're not people you'd want to invite to a party. Like I just saw one where the lady used to chat GPT, which is as woke as possible, to answer people in HR. And they said, well, fidget spinners is ableist. And everyone started falling on their knees, kids saying, please, oh, we're so sorry, blah, 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 blah. These people are afraid to voice their own opinions. And let's be honest, when you're young, you're kind of rebellious. And the best way to be rebellious is not to be woke. I mean, that's what part of it's coming down to. And we'll see what goes on. But I hate saying this is, the way that we're going, China and Russia are ascendant, and the whole entire West is not. So,
yeah.
So what do you guys think would be like going forward? What would be a really cool sci-fi to be made? A really cool sci-fi movie to be made or TV show? Like, what are you aching to watch right now if it was made?
Honestly, I want to see something that Star Trek kind of missed out on, which was the exploration of new worlds that weren't always populated with intelligent life forms, kind of like a wild kingdom of planets, but they're just animals, or dinosaurs or things like that. Maybe things trying
outside
to eat
the
them.
Federation, like they're outside the Federation, they're being explored.
Or even the parts that are not because there are large.
Because in Star Trek, I think everything was already explored, right?
No, there are large swaths of it that are just primitive worlds.
Right, but instead of always bumping into another humanoid species with some sort of thing stuck to their face, just things like lions, tigers. lions, tigers, and bears. Just animals, but some sort of drama with
I would like
how
the
it would
Orville,
really be if we. I don't know. I've never watched that, but
without the goofy
and maybe
humor.
where we would encounter life, but not intelligent life. You know what I mean? Or maybe caveman, but stuff where we just go and have different interesting episodes of what would happen if we came to a planet. The air is breathable, maybe not, but there's life, but it's not stuff that wants to have conversations and things like that, but just weird creatures. There's that one show that I forget what it's called where it talks about different alien life forms, but none of them are intelligent. They're just things that have evolved and haven't gotten to that point where they're a social creature or have language or build things,
like,
but just
like apes or something.
Okay.
or just
Or
lions,
dolphins.
tigers, and bears. Yeah, just things like that we could just marvel at new life that's not yet evolved or been subjugated by us yet.
So that sounds like a good idea. Now, let's say you're a crew of the Enterprise and you find one of these planets with these animals. What would be the first thing you would do? Would you check for intelligence or language, or
just do the kind of like?
Do they have like a goldfish brain that resets every 5 seconds, or does it have long memories like elephants do, or are you thinking, can we replicate this food for our ship because we're starving on our ship?
Just all the things that we would really do. Set up cameras, maybe try to tranquilize them or catch them and tag them and put trackers on them, and set up trail cams all over the place, sampling the water, sampling the plant life, doing the things that we would actually do, but not always having to have a freaking conversation with the species we meet, but maybe some drama every once in a while with the.
So would you be the captain and you're asking the science doctor guy, why are these things alive? This planet was nuked years ago. How are they still alive?
Stuff like that.
And
Eventually
then you find out there's a twist ending. You find out how they've survived.
So I'm going to bring up something because you're all talking about this. Has anyone seen? Not that it's my favorite thing, but it's kind of interesting, which is the Raised by Wolves.
I tried watching it, but
was it good? Was that a good show?
Get into it.
It was a little different. It was kind of slow. See, the problem I have with a lot of it is you still want some adventure and action. I'll tell you what I would love to have, and which I was showing before when you were mentioning dinosaurs, because I don't mind interpolitical stuff, but admittedly it feels. I would love to just simply see something like Predation, where you start putting lasers on dinosaurs. You have people there. It's a kind of a fantastic world with this. You have some time anomalies where you go explore. I think part of it is if they just go from planet to planet, people don't really come into this thing. Is because then people don't. I don't like the one-offs. I do like kind of a campaign style aspect of where people go through it. But some of these things were. I want to see some monsters. I want to see some things like that. I want some adventure.
You need a Sarlacc pit every now and then.
Oh, Manal, did you see Annihilation?
Yeah, I did not.
With Natalie Portman?
Some of it was pretty cool, but to be honest, I didn't care about Natalie Portman or any of the main characters. And because of that, it's hard to get into a movie if I don't give a damn about the characters.
Yeah. Did you see, what was it, Arrival?
Was that the one where they were meeting the ones that were like kind of tripods and there was a big explosion? That one I actually kind of enjoyed.
They talked, their language was time based or something.
There was something
they drew ink and they made these little squiggly things.
Yeah.
And the lady was able to translate their language. That was interesting.
I want it to be interesting where they're learning to do this and there are miscommunications. Not everything has to be. We talk about this thing, but how can we forget like Avatar? Though I've heard is
because I didn't like it.
Well, no, but I mean, as far as science, to be fair, and some of it is yes, okay, it's Dancing with the Wolves with blue people. But it's
what was that one Jupiter Ascending?
I never watched it.
The superhero show? Yeah, I just watched it.
No.
Okay.
The one the Wachowskis did before everybody found out they were weirdos.
They were in Hollywood. When did people not find that out?
They were still dudes.
No, didn't see that one.
No.
After Fifth Element, I kind of became real picky about what I watch after that because
I still love Fifth Element.
definitely-
I would love to
that's
see a
definitely
Fifth
classic.
Element series.
they don't make movies like you can't have movies with cleavage anymore.
Well, I don't think he had cleavage in that.
Well, no, I think that would
the McDonald's scene.
Oh
I guess you can say
yeah,
the movie
okay.
enough.
Yeah, I remember now. I'm thinking specifically Mila Jovovich.
Stewardesses on the cruise ship.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That would just be fun. That's the kind of movie I want to watch.
I would love to see an ongoing series in a world like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or in a universe like that where they're all going through. You can still do that stuff.
Did you guys see the new Dune?
You know, I like the new Dune actually. Have you seen the new Dune?
I've seen it.
It's true to the book. It's more true to the book.
I don't know which one I like. I still like both versions of Dune.
Yep.
They both have their different styles.
I just wish the costume department had more money. Version? Yeah, I like that one the most. I just wish it had a higher budget.
I can't remember that one. The one with William Hurt.
Yeah,
I didn't watch that one, but
you should. It's worth it.
Well,
I watched some of it, and then I stopped having Sci-Fi Channel to watch for some reason. But
the reason why you stopped watching it, the reason why you stopped watching Sci-Fi is now it's Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
When they renamed it to Sci-Fi, that was the end of Sci-Fi.
No. It's when they put WWE on Sci-Fi Channel. We knew that was the end of it.
Grandma, send me a link somewhere.
Fear Factor.
But see, the new Dune, to me, having listened to the book a couple years ago, was very, very true to it. And most of the people complain like, okay, it's one character. The rest of it is pretty true to the book. It has the same.
It's not just the one character for me. It's the whole aesthetic approach.
Okay,
everything
is
just concrete, and when I think Dune, I think artistry and handcrafted, carved things. Because everything else I've ever seen has been.
Yeah, the director is very minimalist in his films.
But visually, it's still spectacular.
When I remember, reading the original Dune book, I don't really remember the first movie being all that different. Maybe
it's massively different.
Around the halfway point, it changes.
I guess in the first movie, they crunched things down so that Paul's sister's born. And it rains on Arrakis, and I don't think any of that happened in the first book.
No, it happens at the end. Well, remember, this is a two-part
series. Not the raining. The raining part doesn't happen in the books. At the end of the first movie, it doesn't rain at the end of.
Thanks, Grandma.
The whole thing is the Dune movie did very well for following the books. I thought it was great visually. I love the fact they used the actual ornithopter look. It has the same feel. I like how they did the shields, especially when the big battle scene on the Arrakis, where the bombs blow through it. I thought those were well done. I liked a lot of the repulsors. It does have again, if you don't like the aesthetic, you don't like the aesthetic. I still enjoy the original movie.
Welcome to the show.
I still like the original movie, but they are two very different things. It's the, but I just thought it was really cool for a lot of it. But
what did you think about 2010? After you saw 2001 1,000 times, and then 2010 comes out, did you like 2010?
I saw 2010 first before I saw 2001.
Oh, really?
and
that's the one with Roy Scheider, right?
Well, because
that's right. You were born in 1980 or something.
Okay, no.
Connor, that's the one with Roy Scheider, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, I hated 2010.
Okay.
I hated that movie with a passion.
I will sum it up for you.
I only saw it once.
Dave,
are you saying it
please don't do that.
Oh, okay.
That was the Dave, please don't do that. That was because I watched it when I was in high school. And I went, "This is so boring. It is so bad." My God, 2010 was a lot better.
Well, yeah. 2001 is a love-hate movie. You either liked it a lot, or you were like, "What the hell did I watch? This is junk."
Get the novelizations.
No,
they are better.
Yeah, the book's always better. So the book explains what's going on.
Well, I say novelization because the movie came out first. But the book is better.
Do I need to do my nerd voice? Well, actually, 2001 novel came out when the movie was released. They were both written at the same time. When the screenplay was written, the book was being written.
Ah, okay. I'm pretty sure the screenplay was written first.
Arthur C. Clarke would watch the dailies, and he would write a novelization.
Outland is a good one.
Is that how? Outland is good. Outland is good. Still,
Outland is just Outland. I'd like to see more. Outland is High Noon, right? That's all that is.
Yeah,
is High Noon.
Yes, I know. On an oil platform.
But High Noon was great.
Slowly paced.
It's a Western on Io in the future. It's science fiction, obviously.
Wow, imagine now we're getting back to the original topic.
Well, no. I actually I enjoy looking at that.
That'll happen once more.
But when we talk about all these things, the stories are the same. It's just the setting. Like I think you mentioned, Justin. It's a setting difference, and I'm okay with that.
Which actually segues into my last question.
You can tell the same story with 1,000 different backdrops behind you, and it just changes the backdrop.
Well, 2010 was 1984, in my opinion, because all the technology in that movie looked like 1984. It didn't look at all like 2010. When 2001 came out, it looked like 2001.
I'm going to say this much: I still feel cheated for the whole thing of where my damn flying cars. We were.
Oh, they're out there.
They're out there.
No, hold it. They're supposed to be everywhere. Look at Minority Report versus what's going on. My whole point on this entire thing is all the stuff we were promised in the 1970s never came true. We were supposed to have rockets in our backyard so we could go into space.
Well,
we were supposed to have flying cars. We were supposed to get the Jetsons, and what do we get? We get something that's just slightly better than 1986.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens.
Now we don't have barely any energy to do anything with.
Well, we have plenty of energy, just no one wants to allow us to have it.
We have resources.
Well, yeah, that's how they control you. Everything right now is about
it's control. Scarcity. Democrats are about scarcity. That's all.
It's not even that. In the 50s, the commies dug a really deep hole, and if you go down to the bottom of the hole, it starts melting metal.
Yeah.
So most power in the world is generated by boiling water.
Crack in the world, man. You're talking about crack in the world.
You're telling me you can't dig a hole to put a water boiler down and have
it's a cost thing, Justin. It's a cost thing.
Trust me, it's probably a lot cheaper than building a nuclear power plant.
Okay, it's cheaper to get oil from Saudi Arabia because oil just comes up and they scoop it out of with buckets. They don't have to drill. So their oil is always going to be cheaper than ours.
Well, that occurs in the Gulf of Mexico too. They just don't want you drilling there. There's a lot of stuff like that.
I have this theory that the only thing that would make what's going on make any sense is that since we have so much, oil under our, under the United States right now, that I think someone got it in their head that if we buy up everybody else's oil, then we'll actually have the monopoly on it.
Well, you can't. Well, I guess you can buy the land, but you can't buy all the oil because oil's infinite. Oil is always being made.
No, I know that.
The media will never tell you this. The junk scientists will never tell you this. Earth is always replenishing oil. So oil is always going to be somewhere on Earth. You're going to find it.
And for you kids watching this, years and years from now, it doesn't come from dinosaurs.
And oil, they say, "Oh, don't you're gonna mess with you're gonna mess with nature with this oil drilling nonsense." Hello, the oil is in the dirt. It's in the nature. It's in the dirt already. We're just collecting it.
Can you imagine what would happen if we never used it? it would probably kill us.
No, I'm
The La Brea tar pits would be half of Los Angeles, probably.
I'm going to mention something because I actually heard this from a, I guess he was a captain. Well, we got to use other people's resources, so we can keep having ours. So we don't want. That's dumb. Anyway, the other point was remember, it's all about the petrodollar. If we don't let them using their dollars, anyway, no, that's well, that's true. Actually, I have heard someone say that if we can't
Argentina that just switched over to the BRIC system.
And what's the deal? Yeah. What's the deal with scientists or the crazy lefty scientists wanting to skip fission and go right to fusion? It's like let's turn off all the fission reactors. We'll just go right straight to fusion reactors. Like, okay, that sounds pretty expensive and hard to maintain. How do you maintain a fusion reaction on Earth?
Well,
how do you do that?
Here's the thing with fusion: is they tell it's 50 years out there, but
you just need to make steam. All we need is steam. Just make steam.
That's why I
from
said
fission.
dig the hole.
Well, no. Well, here's what it comes down to.
Put a big brass pot down the thing.
Justin, I've actually dealt with some of this. I actually worked for the Energy Regulatory Commission. I know a little bit about these things. Yeah. Which is when the guy said, "Do you want renewable energy?" I said, "I know you're trying to do the right thing, but I'm going to tell you right now that is dumb and it's inefficient and it's not environmentally friendly." I said, "I know you feel like you're doing the right thing, but I've actually done that." But anyway, the part of it really comes down to is, I forgot, was it Ehrlich, which is the one that was talking about the population bomb and all this other stuff, that we'd all be dead by 2000. We wouldn't have any.
Yeah, it was bullshit.
Anyway, he said, well, we can't allow people to have unlimited energy. That's see, this is where I bring that some people are kind of the differences. When you start looking at Louis Pasteur and some of these others, they wanted to uplift people using science. And the problem was I think in the 1940s or 50s, we saw where the industrialization was destroying human beings.
It's like the thing they use for Hitler with killing all the Slavs. He actually said it's not our responsibility to educate them. We can't uplift their society. They have to want to do it themselves.
The Slavs are some of the smartest people around.
Well, at the time, it was the argument, right? But you can't uplift another people. They have to want to do it themselves. If they don't, you'll never be able to do it.
Well, but the Scottish did it in 100 years.
But they chose to do it.
Well,
some cultures still live the same way they did 10,000 years ago.
Where it needs to go. If you don't know,
but see, this the whole thing of when people the point really being is that the people in power don't want to uplift the world, whereas some of the ones, whether you like him or not, Elon Musk says, I want to go to Mars. He's done more as far as innovative space than NASA has done in the last 50 years. And why is that? It's because
he's done all of it without government rules or regulations. He just done it on his own because that's free market.
Well, he gets a lot of government funding, but
capitalism.
The things I really hate is when people complain that he's redoing experiments that were done in the 50s because he's having to reinvent the science that was lost.
I'm going to tell you this. That is a lot.
What technology was
many
lost?
Cases.
The auto landing stuff was done.
The what?
The vertical takeoff and landing stuff.
Oh, the Vistol?
The
VTOL. Yeah, but here's part of it when it comes down to it is, and I will say this being an engineer, every 40 years or so, they forget there's an amnesia that occurs as one generation retires. The new generations come up and they don't have that memory.
Institutional knowledge.
The institutional knowledge gets lost about every 40 years in engineering and all these others, whether people like it or not. Well, I mean, you can see it in the military. The military can't do crap right now. I mean, they can fight an insurgency, but they can't.
Yeah, I got out of the military when Obama was replacing all the generals and stuff with lesbians.
Well, it doesn't.
I saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, but I mean, whether you do it with lesbians or not, in the military they only stay 20 years and max 30 in most cases, and all those people are gone. You know,
No, but they do so much damage while they're there, though.
Oh, no, I'm not disagreeing with you on that part, but I'm saying, but the institutional knowledge on how to fight from the Cold War, all those people are retired. 100% of them have retired. The ones that used to do that, they're all gone. And how do you get that you know, I hate saying it, the Russians are learning more than we are in how to do that.
Well, they were still in the military. There were still, 20 years ago, there were still guys in the military that knew how to kill stuff and were willing to do it. But one by one, they got outed out by the president or somebody. They were forced to get out.
Well, generals are not the...
Or they had to fight with their hands tied behind their backs, so they just retired on the spot.
Well, generals are politicians, to be fair on that. But where are your senior NCOs? They're all retired. The ones that, like, when my father was growing up and there was a forger, they fought with Canadians. They fought and said, okay, how are we going to get artillery on target all the time and everything else? And nowadays, no one knows how to do that anymore. They don't know how to do the basic skills that every officer had to know in the 70s.
And it's not even that. It's like, what was it, 2-3 years ago, there was a war game and they were caught rigging it to make themselves look better.
You know what? I heard that, but I've dealt with some of these things. You don't learn anything if everything sinks. You just don't. You have to go back. You have to reset it and say, okay, guys, let's go back and look at it. And so you can do some of that war game. I've heard about it. Everyone screams and yells, but I'll be honest. That's like me. You don't learn anything in chess if I immediately put you in checkmate in 6 moves.
Yes, but if one side is told they're not allowed to even fire if they see you or acknowledge your existence until,
Well, the UN decides what we do, and basically we show up and we count how many body bags we need. That's about all we do now.
And the UN doesn't do it. We tell the UN, this is what you're going to do, and then we follow behind on that. Did you just see the report for the UN where he says, well, how does this with the Chinese reporter? You have to watch that one. It's hilarious. He comes over, the Chinese reporter says,
was that the girl with the mini skirt?
No. This is the guy. He's asking the UN spokesman. And it's actually the UN thing. He goes over and he looks at it. And he says, you're talking about Russia invading Ukraine, but what about the United States and Syria? Isn't that the same thing? He says, oh, well, that's a military action. There are no soldiers in Syria. And he said, could you explain on how the 5 people, one got injured, one died, and then 5 soldiers got injured in Syria if there aren't ground troops there? And you can just tell the UN guys you short circuit.
Yeah.
Well,
because it's a bunch of bullshit, and yeah.
I heard this theory about what they're wanting to do down there in the States is move your entire armed forces over to mercenaries, basically.
No.
So you don't get to claim their soldiers on the ground if they're contractors, right?
No, that's not true. I can having been to both.
I'm talking like in the next 50 to 100 years.
No.
An economic zone with.
No, that's not how.
Well.
It's do you have contractors? But the contractors
50 to 100 years.
Yeah,
we already know that in 10 years, we're supposed to all be underwater and dead from the sun burning us up.
The problem is the hockey stick in Al Gore's movie expired in 2004.
Well, it doesn't even matter because the carbon dioxide.
We were supposed to be underwater in 1998.
He's right. It's the hockey stick's meaningless for some people. But what I'm saying,
considering all the oceanfront property they're all buying up, apparently they never believed any of that.
No, it's
San Diego is still 11 feet above sea level. It hasn't changed since. As far as I can remember,
what they did is they showed it, and it was too, like, some areas are they're still raising it approximately, but it was funny watching them. This is going up to 3 millimeters a year. Like, okay, 3 millimeters a year means in 100 years it's 1 foot lower. Do you realize that Venice has been sinking? It's just like they complain about Venice. Venice has been sinking for thousands of years. Okay, There's
Yes,
the media
thing is,
doesn't.
Venice
the
does
media,
actually sink, though.
the media only
does
talks
stink.
about
Consolidating.
the media only talks about ice eroding when the waves hit the ice and the ice comes off and falls into they don't talk about where ice is forming.
Yeah.
They never mention where the snow is or where the ice is forming.
Anyway, I didn't want to get too political about that, but I think part of it is, going back to these genres is let's just have some fun. I just want to have fun with the games. And yes,
so you want sci-fi that's aspirational.
Well, I do, but
it doesn't have to be all the time. Just as long as there's some general wave towards that.
But do you want perfect utopia in your sci-fi?
No.
James Dale has the perfect way. I like to describe it. There has to be contrast. You have to have the light and the dark. If it's all dark, you might as well just slit your wrist after you make your character. Just all right. What the DM says, what do you do? And you go, I slit my wrists because there's no point. Or, it's too Care Bear-ish and you can do no wrong. You got to have that contrast. You got to have the light. You got to have the dark. You got to have the grim, but you got to have, hope.
Yeah, you have grim, and then you have like anti-hero like Mel Gibson in Road Warrior. Or you have Clint Eastwood in the spaghetti westerns. He's the anti-hero.
well, I'm going to bring this
up. But you've got to have. You got to have it both. You can't. If it's like messing with your tint and your color on your TV, the old TVs. You got to dial up too far one way or the other. It's unwatchable, thus unplayable.
Well, see, sometimes I want one game versus another, depending on the thing. I want a mixture. Sometimes I want to play Alien, and sometimes I want to play Star Wars, and sometimes I want to play, John Carter. It just depends on what my mood is. But I don't want to do one of them exclusively all the time. Like, just shoot me.
I like movies where it's already dystopia and the main character is going to try to
rebuild,
either slow it down from getting worse or make it go into reverse. Better.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, Buck Rogers is a perfect example of that because he's in a dystopia that's on the ascendant part of. I think we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Well, and who has the Buck Rogers license right now? That's not. I mean, if they made a really good system for Buck Rogers, I might be kind of interested in it. It's
I think Universal.
Did Savage Worlds have it? I think Savage Worlds had it.
Oh, game wise?
Yeah. I think Savage Worlds has Buck Rogers.
I don't know.
Well, guys, I gotta hit the road. It's a little bit past my normal time. This was a lot of fun. You guys are all welcome back next week. Don't know what the topic is, but it'll be something interesting. You guys made it so, and I got a whole bunch of notes from tonight that will hopefully be implemented in my next sci-fi game. Thanks again, guys. This was a lot of fun.
And I really recommend those Empire Man books to all three of you. They'd be right up all three of your alleys.
It's on my notes, Justin.
Yeah.
So, guys, have a great weekend. If you guys want to kick back and chat, after I close up shop, feel free. You guys know where I gotta go.
I gotta get pizza.
Ooh, pizza.
That sounds really good.
I gotta wake up early and plan.
Had burgers.
I'm gonna order pizza.
I have to go to bed early because I go to work tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Take care,
I'll
everybody.
See you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you later.
Really appreciate it. Bye, guys.
All right. Good night.